The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Leadership Podcast. And of course, it's another edition of The Big Issue. I hope you had a very wonderful weekend. And of course, it's a new week. And of course, there's so many things to discuss on the big issue, especially on the political talk. Well, as usual, I'm your regular host, George Agba is my name. And with me here in the studio, our in-house analyst, we have Silas Ezeogu.
Welcome.
And of course, Chibuzo Okaibe. And for the big issue of the day, it is the PDP crisis. Much ado about running mate. The decision by the presidential candidate of the opposition People's Democratic Party to settle for Delta State Governor Patrick Okowa as his running mate, despite the recommendation of Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike by a 17-man committee set up by the party, is threatening to tear the opposition party apart. Most Nigerians worry that with the internal wrangling dragging the party backward, the country might be bereft of a formidable opposition to square up the governing party in the next elections. Sequel to his victory at the PDP convention, where he beat Wike and other contenders to the presidential ticket, Atiku had nominated Okowa as his running mate, despite the recommendation of the 7-man committee. And of course, certain chieftains of the party, including Governor of Benue State, Samuel Otom, former Plateau State Governor, Jonah Jang, and others, had criticized the choice of Okowa as the party's vice presidential candidate. And of course, there were reports on Friday that Wike had snubbed a former minister of police affairs and ally of Atiku, Adamu Waziri, who attempted to initiate a peace talk with him in Turkey. And of course, the loyalists of Rivers State Governor have listed conditions for the resolution of the crisis in the People's Democratic Party. And of course, this led the party to form a reconciliation team headed by Atiku himself. The team is made up of top party members, but how they intend to placate the Rivers State Governor is another thing. Chibuzo, we will look at this from a point of view where we'll have to address some of the issues the way they are fairly, because most of the PDP governors are aware of the sacrifices that Wike made after the defeat of the party in 2015. By 2019, after the general election, PDP was like somehow in disarray. At a point, almost everybody left the party, including Atiku, who was said to have relocated to Dubai.
2015?
No, 2019.
Okay.
Say by 2019. And of course, there's a congruence of opinion among some PDP stakeholders that Wike has been treated unjustly because he was one person that sacrificed, stood his ground, and made sure that he held the party both financially and so. Wike's anger, don't you think is justified enough from the way he was treated in the choice of the running mate?
Well, naturally, I think there's an ego issue playing out now. It would have been better they didn't give the notion of offering him the position than what we have now. If his name hadn't come up as one of the likely people to get the position, I'm not sure we would have gotten, to this point. It's just unfortunate that it appeared as if much more people looked in his direction than Okowa's own position. So I think that is why he feels really piqued by the situation at the moment. But I'm also aware that reconciliation has started because as it stands now, it's about his next move? What is he going to do now that it seems as if the position has been filled? The vice presidential slot has been, taken over has been given to Okowa. What does he do next? I think that is what the focus will be on. So the spotlight is definitely going to be on him between now and when the whole reconciliation process ends.
Well, Silas, before we still narrow the whole thing down to the crisis rocking the PDP over a running mate. This running mate thing had become a source of worry because most political parties too, not just only PDP, are having these issues of running mates. Like the governing APC too, it has its own fair share of it, where the presidential candidate Bola Tinubu is unable and has not been able to announce his running mate. And feelers from there is that there are so much vested interest, where most party members, especially second-term governors, are angling and insisting that they must. And I think Tinubu now himself is even afraid. He doesn't want a situation where him and his party, the APC, will suffer will begin to suffer the PDP experience. And that is why perhaps they have not even, and of course, right over there we have a merger, or let me say, the plans of a possible merger or rumors of a possible merger, where we talk of former Kano State Governor Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso and Peter Obi, the former governor of Anambra State, thinking of merging. But I think in their own case, if they merge and now say they form a formidable force, who becomes the presidential candidate of that merger and who now becomes the running mate? That too is another issue. But the running mate issue, do you think this is actually necessary? Because I think a vice presidential candidate should just be somebody that will be there to give support. It's not
Yes.
the politicians don't tend to bother about what Nigerians should be expecting as credible leaders. It is all about their interest.
Yes. Politics is about self-interest first.
Mm.
We are the brand that will play in Nigeria. Self-interest. The interest first. Second, maybe Nigeria and other ones maybe come a distant third. Okay. The vice presidential position is important, but even though some people call it a spare tire, it's not just a spare tire. The experience of Jonathan shows that from vice president to president
That is a
overnight.
lucrative seat.
Yeah,
That might spring up surprises
that's
for you
right.
anytime.
It didn't happen for Shivajon. Thank God that part is okay.
Mm.
But if you are there, you are there. If nature happens and president is not to the fan and can no longer continue, you become the president automatically, and it makes you gives you a stronger bargaining chip to become president next time. I keep telling people outside of the studio that if Jonathan had not been president at the time he was president, Jonathan would never have dreamt of running for president.
At all.
Possibly would not even have dreamt of running for governor if he
No.
was not a deputy governor and his governor. Look at Jonathan enjoyed it more than once. His principal in Bayelsa State, the one that calls himself Governor General of the Generation,
Alamisia.
was taken out by fraud, issues. He was arrested, and Jonathan had
As
to
a
step
deputy, he stepped
in.
in.
Stepped in as deputy governor, and he became vice president. And there's something happened to Yar'Adua. He became sick and died, and
He
he took
became
over.
president.
So people can look at for a second and say, look, if I'm vice president, if anything happens, I'm come president. So that's why it's so important.
I'm a potential
And two,
president as a vice
yes,
president.
Two is that because of the geopolitics of Nigeria, this issue of balancing act has to be there in terms of religion, in terms of region. Okay, so when it comes to the issue of PDP, like you mentioned, I think that it's not even the first time Atiku is facing this kind of backlash. When they picked it to be last time in the Southeast, that was some backlash. Not that Peter wasn't the best candidate he could have picked, but that there was not enough consultations. They didn't manage the process well, and some egos were frayed. Nerves, some egos were pricked. Okay, and then when I listened to the governor of Benue State talking about how Wike has been mistreated, He said that even if um, Atiku wanted to run with Okowa, he should have reached out to Wike before announcing it publicly, because it was a shock for Wike to learn that 14 out of 17 voted for him. When I don't made up his mind to become the vice president candidate, the candidate chooses somebody else that came a distant second, and they went ahead to enumerate the man's good qualities as if Wike doesn't
He's
have
saying
it.
that this is the reason why I picked this one
Yeah.
instead of the one
This,
recommended.
this one, yeah, so it's not good enough. I'm picking this one because he had this one doesn't have it. Personally, Okowa looks like a better candidate for vice president. He's never headed and all the things that go with him. Wike's abrasive nature, insulting people everywhere. It's gara too much. Let me tell you, if you look at since 1999 to now, the only time you had a strong vice president was during Obasanjo's time, and they slugged it out to the end of that regime. That's why even now, Obasanjo and Atiku have not reconciled fully. They just patch, and tomorrow they go back to their. In fact, last week Obasanjo fired again and said he made a mistake choosing a vice president. And we found out that Obasanjo, after that, he didn't want to have a vice president that is so strong that would threaten the president's position. Now you can see that whoever the president of Obasanjo was the man from Katsina, Yaradua, and they chose a very humble Jonathan to go with him. And when Jonathan became president, they looked for another quiet governor, Namadi Sambo, to go with him. And when Buhari came on board, they looked for one
A
gentleman,
pastor, a man of God for that matter.
a quiet, level-headed gentleman to go with him. You can't say no case a gentleman by any. In fact, I think we'll be looking over his shoulders if he had Wike.
But
let me say something.
it was being loud and brash.
See,
and
let me.
does it guarantee whether you will not be a loyal vice president?
That is see, that is one aspect of it.
You can't tell.
Of course, Atiku will also be mindful that if I get there, will I have this job and sleep busy? He has to be mindful of that. He also have to be mindful of what will be the perception of the people to the vice president he has. Atiku already carrying a baggage. Nobody a lot of baggage. Yesterday or 2 days ago was saying that why people think I'm a thief. It's not I'm saying so. I've not called him a thief. Said why people think I'm a thief. Okay,
Well,
so there's already a baggage around him.
He reads the papers and he sees what people.
Whether truly or not, that's what has that baggage around him. Everybody knows that all these billions that Wike was said to have used to support the party could not have come from his side as the governor. Point blank. I have some group complain that Wike has, squandered reverse money trying to prop up PDP and try to run for this. So that's also. So if you have two men with that kind of things on the ballot, will you not clash that ticket? So this idea of having an angel and a demon, to balance things up. Wike can mobilize, and all you need to know is that there are some people who do better when they're in charge. If you put Wike as a vice president that to serve, like what did the former governor of Ponutu say about Shibajo?
Nice guy.
He's a nice guy. If you put Wike as a vice, he will get bored with it. He needs action. He needs a place where he's in charge, where you give the command. He's a very authoritative person. You don't use such a person, as a vice, when you are still proposing for power. So I think that those are things why Atiku did what he did. But Atiku did not manage the communication process very well. In fact, he didn't even have set up a committee of 17 wise men to choose for him. It is said that long ago, he already had his man penciled that it was going to be P2P if Peter remained in the party or Okowa. And immediately Peter exited the party, his mind was on Okowa. It was even long before the convention. So he didn't need to go through the rigmarole of setting a committee and not. You can just after it say, okay, thank you, you have had a good fight, I want to support, but this is the person I'm going with. This is the reason. Look at what is in for you. What is about what is there for me? What is there for Wike? Tell him what is there for him in the next position, and he will rest.
Thank you very much, Silas. I think we'll quickly go for a short break, hoping that our viewers will contribute constructively on the conversation to the conversation on the big issue. And of course, don't go offline. We'll be back in a moment.
For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.
The big issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
You're welcome back. We're still on the big issue in Leadership Podcast. And of course, the big issue of the day is the PDP crisis, where the issue of a running mate is threatening to tear the party apart ahead of the 2023 general election. And of course, just while we're on break, most of our viewers have started sending in their comments. And of course, we have Michael Nome here. Michael Nome is asking, you rob a man and try to console him. Is that realistic? Silas, you see what we're saying here. Now you were talking that at the end of the day, Atiku's wisdom perhaps could be that he is actually trying to balance a situation where you have how did you call it? An angel and a demon, so that the two would know. So that is an indictment on an Atiku. And Atiku was asking, he was explaining yesterday why people think he's a thief. And you said nobody called him a thief. But that is what you are doing, because at the end of the day, when you say he needed an Okowa to now balance, will have an angel and what? A demon. So that means, during the Obasanjo's era, Obasanjo, one of the reasons he gave is that while he left the economic management for Atiku before he could turn back, he discovered that Atiku has looted almost everything in the country.
That is what president said.
It's an allegation anyway.
I also said something that what he took was enough to feed 400 people, Nigeria for 300 years, or vice versa. Yes. Those nobody has proven any of those allegations
against him.
You understand? Even other ones about how they mismanage the translation process. Nobody has proven anything against him. But it doesn't mean that those images are not attached to him somehow. You know the problem in Nigeria, if you're accused, you really give to other, even when you finally clear yourself, that tag will go with you somehow.
Well, thank you very much.
So that is it. I'm not saying I have nothing against him. In fact, I feel sorry for him because just like Buhari, I wrote so many times from all 30 years, But I won't fault him. And there's also another positive thing about the choice he made. You know, the Southeast people, the Igbo people, have been shouting that this is their third president on PDP platform. So, with PDP out of the way, eh, he also felt that this guy who's a Igbo person too, Ifeanyi Okowa, that if he had someone like Ifeanyi Okowa, he will appeal to that sentiment more. Since the greatest supporters of PDP over the last 20 years have been people from the Southeast. Okay? Okay. So he felt that
Wike has a Southeast background too.
but he said he's not an Igbo person. He said it from Amechi, his brother said I'm Igbo and claims everywhere. But Wike has literally said there is not an Igbo person. He had denied it all the time. In fact, some of his posts even against the Igbo people over there is well known. So Atiku may have tried to play into that game by saying, okay, let me have, if I can't have direct Southeast, let me have an Igbo person from around. Okay, so those are the things you are consider. Plus Okowa's track record as a his trajectory is very very long, from commissioner or something to SSG to commissioner to senator to governor. He has, and he's very level-headed. So if Atiku is saying is this is why he picked the goal, it means that he didn't see those qualities
A Wike.
a weekend. And he's somebody, maybe somebody, see, he has the prerogative to choose. But if Kwame Obasanjo to choose his president, is a running mate, did anybody sit to tell him what to do? He just got Atiku and said, come on, my advice.
But he regretted it.
Well, he regretted
He
it
said
because
that was one of the biggest mistakes.
John Jonathan chose,
when
when Jonathan chose,
was running mate.
see, when Jonathan chose his own,
Mm.
Namadi, did anybody, he chose, he chose the person.
Well, well,
even when
silence.
Buhari chose, he chose himself.
Well, let's
So,
let
I don't know why it is some wise men that will choose
for time purpose. Let's just see how we can actually
manage.
For instance, now anyway, we can always agree that sometimes don't judge a man by the way you see him talk, because Wike might be loud and brash, he might be hyperactive, but don't surprise that when it comes to deputizing, he might turn out to be a good deputy. Because, okay, for instance, in 1985, when Buhari was a military, he was a head of state. Buhari himself was Buhari, but what made this administration, his regime tough then, was his deputy, Tunde Diagbon. All this war against it. He was even the one that was considered as his third man. So such combinations, too, you consider them before you. But well, Chibuzo, just like Michael Nome has said here, he asked a simple question. You rob a man and try to console him. Is that realistic? And I think he was saying that in respect of a team. The BOT chairman, Wali Jibrin, said the party has constituted a team headed by Atiku himself to go and meet Wike, a kind of reconciliation committee. So, in the words of Michael Noma, how realistic is that committee when it comes to actually reconciling aggrieved parties? Because just like he said, you don't rob a man and try to console him. A situation where the person involved knows very well that it's not about him just getting angry for nothing. He was the one that was recommended, and the process for which they said they should pick a running mate, he emerged. Then somebody throw it apart and turn around and say, no, if this is what you came up with, I can go and pick my day. You know this kind of thing. So how realistic is the articulate committee of reconciliation?
Realistic in what sense?
As in
realistic that they can get results, or realistic that they should even set it up in the first place.
Realistic that if they'll set it up in the first place and the results of reconciliation, all of them.
Like I said earlier, Wike is in the spotlight. You can't force a man to take a position. They can only appeal to him and try to appease him. Of course, there will be offers on the table. It's become a negotiation thing now. He's a politician, clearly, and this is politics. It's about getting the best for yourself interest first, then carrying your people along. Because as it stands now, Wike is not just talking for himself alone. We have seen a number of his foot soldiers make. In fact, they have been more vocal than he has been since this whole thing started. You're looking at the likes of Fayoshe, Otom, Jonajang, and these are all people who have rallied behind him. And so they'll be watchful and mindful of the decision he takes at this point. But again, there is a bigger picture in the sense that do they consider what would happen if Atiku begins to change who he has nominated as his running mate? What message would that send? He has taken a position. If he begins to say, okay, let me take back Wike and remove Okowa, what message would that send?
Sorry to cut
So
you
there are
short. The
some
people
things-
conversing, who people conversing that he should drop Okowa and pick Wike, are saying that by doing so, he is even going to sell himself to show that he's a kind of person that, as a president, you have a listening ear, and he will bow to the
Well,
whims of the people.
it depends on which angle you're looking at. That's one way to look at it. There's also another way of looking at it.
Okay.
It just depends on how Atiku wants to play his own cards.
Yeah,
He's the
cannot
one,
take by his
as much
conviction.
as Wike is in the spotlight, he's also in the spotlight. Whatever decision he makes now,
The devil's alternative.
will determine how far people will take him. But like Mr. Silas did point out, it is his prerogative to choose who he wants to run with. Because at the end of the day, he will be stuck with whoever becomes his running mate. So as much as Wike's people are not angry the way he handled, because I'm not sure their anger is not so much about who he chose, but the way he handled the chosen, and the way it's an ego thing. His ego feels bruised, ego wise. So a reconciliation team has been set up. Let's see how far they go. Wike too should feel gratified that at least he has made the party to stop and listen. It shows you he doesn't have to explain how impactful he is at this point. That every party organ has come to a standstill and is focused on him,
Waiting on him.
says so much already in itself.
Yes.
So it's about how much he wants to maximize that, because there's a window too that that can play out. Because it gets to a point where people say, "I beg, we don't beg you, we don't beg you. If you don't go agree, you just have to move on." So it's about knowing the timing and how to balance that. Because in politics, usually any kind of currency you have, the currency of goodwill, network, resource, wealth, and everything you have, but there's a limit to which you can stretch people's patience and that. So there's a committee. Let's see how that, and it's a good thing, like perhaps for them, that Atiku wants to lead this thing. It shows how important this is to Atiku, and perhaps how Wike, is to them. But again, how you maximize, like I've said it before, how you maximize what you have now will be very, very critical for not just for Wike, for Atiku, and the party.
Well, thank you very much. Silas, you heard what Chibuzo said, but you see, when you talk of the fact that Atiku now resigns his earlier decision and go for Wike, he'll be seen as a weakling who cannot stand by his word. And at the same time, if he does not, he will also be seen as somebody who cannot have a rethink or think of the overall interest before doing as a president. Whichever decision he takes becomes the devil's alternative. But be that as it may, well, the PDP Board of Trustee chairman said something that is very instructive. He said, even if it will require them to kneel down and beg Wike, they're going to do that. Just underscores how important Wike is to the party. And in the process, Chibuzo is just saying here that at this point in time, it is left for Wike to begin to consider, to be magnanimous in understanding, because at a point you reach some people who will say, well, we have begged you, you don't want to hear, you're on your own.
You are worse. Anyway,
What would you say in this regard?
I
In the
think-
final
I
analysis,
think that Chibuzo hit the nail on the head, saying, see, in politics, you keep negotiating. That's why I like diplomacy. Diplomatic, failed. You win so many wars without shooting bullets. Okay. I said before that I don't. Most people, apart from Wike's own clique, will not have a wrong, will not have a problem with the choice. made, but it's in the communication, in the way it was managed. So it is important that the concern with Wike, because Wike is a strong, everybody knows it. In fact, people said it correctly, that the whole party has stood still because of Wike. So if you were a thinking man, you had to have achieved most of what you have achieved by making the party to stand and take notice. The party has not treated any other person like that. Okay. So if you continue to drag it out, people will say, okay, it's his character. He doesn't even know when to play that maturity of a politician. But everything about him is hit and run, that kind of stuff. So it's now for him to play into that moment. And the whole country knows that people are talking about Wike. In fact, apart from the obedient movement in the political scene now, I don't know any other name being mentioned like Wike, even beyond, even above Tinubu and in the last 2-3 few days. Okay, it's Wike, and that's what is reigning. So that's, in fact, it's as if you run an election. So that's important. That's so important. It's very, very important. I also know that they need his purse strings when they go to the war frame. Especially recently, it was learned that the ruling party has a war chest of 6.5 trillion to come to prosecute the election. So say vote buying.
Allegedly.
I say reportedly.
Okay.
You know, and of course they will deny it. There's some insiders say it's not far from it. There's no smoke without fire. So they also need, a Wike with his war chest as well to be ready for that kind of battle if it comes to that. So I think that there's nothing that cannot be negotiated. What Nike needs to be told is, okay, maybe we wronged you. Sorry, to err is human, to waste is divine. But this is the role they want to play. We didn't forget about it, but we know that you are going to play this role, this more important role going forward. See, diplomatic people, if you see where they present things, they can sell you your own bed and you'll be happy to buy it back. Understand? So let them take time and do it. And the fact that somebody is leading it shows the kind of respect he's having to Wike and the importance he has. So Atiku is facing a lot of big party. He needs Wike and the South behind him because he's already having a lot of fights from Kwankwasia movement in the north. So and the traditional place has already got a lot of votes have been the south, southeast, south, and so on. So I wish that they can solve that so I can have a stable ticket to run with.
Well, it is an unfolding issue, and of course, within the week, the committee set up to actually reconcile aggrieved party in the running mate saga would have actually sat, and then we'll begin to know how it unfolds. Atiku, who is out of the country, is expected back this week. And of course, the national chairman of the party, who it begins to appear as if he is now becoming an unhealthy subject to scapegoatism, because there have been calls for his sack, his resignation too, will be available. In the coming days, we'll begin to see what that committee comes up with. Well, this is where we draw the curtain for the big issue. Thank you for keeping tab with us out there. And of course, we'll thank our in-house analysts for addressing the big issue. Wait, join us same time tomorrow for another edition of this program. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.